Hello friends, in today's video we are going to be talking about vermiculture or vermicomposting. So you may be asking, what on earth is vermiculture? Vermiculture, another name for it, is earthworm farming. And vermicomposting is using the earthworm castings or their poop to use in your garden for compost and fertilizer, for fertilizer mainly. So if you've been following things like I have, you've probably heard that there's a fertilizer shortage. And it may not affect things so much this year, but it will affect things quite a bit next year if the trend continues. And you may have also noticed that on my channel that I've really been accelerating my prepping and storage of food, and I've begun gardening again. These are all things that I feel I need to do to provide for my family and to make sure that no matter what happens, because we don't know what the future holds, that we will have plenty to eat. And even if the worst doesn't happen, we will still use the things that we eat and that I grow and that I buy. That's the number one thing about having a prepper pantry, is you eat what you store and you store what you will eat. And that is my rule of thumb that I go by. And so I have gotten very interested in the idea of having a worm farm. I've done a lot of research on it, watched lots of videos, and I bought a book, and I will go over in this video everything that you will need to start your worm farm. We will be setting up my worm farm for the very first time, and we will be doing this all together. So this will be a vermicomposting video 101 for beginners and how to set up a beginning worm farm. It is really a very inexpensive way to provide fertilizer for your gardens or your house plants, or if you have a container garden or whatever. It is not an expensive thing to get started. You can start your worm farm for $150 or less, depending on the size of the worm farm that you want to start. The main thing that you need to keep in mind when you start a vermiculture farm or a worm farm is that it takes time. You are not going to get castings slash fertilizer right away. It will take up to 3 months, sometimes maybe a little bit longer, to get enough castings to actually harvest and use. Now the castings do go a long way. They are very nutrient dense, so you don't need a lot. You'd only need like a handful for an entire potted plant, or a couple tablespoons, maybe 1/4 of a cup for a plant that you're planting in the garden. If you want to amend your soil, it may take a little bit more. If you have a big garden, you're going to want a bigger worm farm. Now this is March, and I'm starting my worm farm now in hopes that by the fall, when I do my fall raised bed, I will have enough castings to amend the raised bed so that I can get some good growth on my fall vegetables. And then come spring, I should have a lot of castings to put in our new garden for next year. So let me turn the camera around and I will show you what you need to set up your worm farm if this is something that interests you. The main thing you're going to need is some sort of a container to keep your worm farm in. And it also, the container will depend upon where you plan to keep your worm farm. You can keep them outside, but it takes a little bit more finesse to do that because they don't like things to be super hot, and of course they will not survive in sub-zero temperatures. Now, if you want to keep your worm farm outside in the summertime when it's super hot, just make sure they're kind of in a shady spot where they're not going to get direct sunlight. And in the wintertime, you may want to bring your worm farm into a heated space out of the elements if you have a heated garage. Or in my case, I'm keeping my worm farm here in the basement. I'm going to keep it down here all year long. I have this big long counter here in my office that I don't really use for anything except to gather and accumulate junk that I have to then put away. You've seen my office before and how bad it gets. So I thought I'm just going to clear off a space, and I'm going to have my worm farm in the basement. Now I want to have enough castings to amend our entire garden next year, so I went with a rather large tub here. This is a 35-gallon tote, Rubbermaid tote. You can use up to a 50-gallon, but that's really large. You would need probably a couple thousand worms to get started in that. And you can go down as small as a 15-gallon tote if you live in an apartment or if you have limited space. You wouldn't want to get anything smaller than a 15-gallon tote because your worms just won't do as well. Now for this tote, you're definitely going to need a lid for it. Worms like to be in the dark, so you want your tote to be not a clear tote. You want a colored tote so that that light doesn't go shine through and bother them. If you're going to have your worm farm outside, it's a good idea to have a tote with a lid that has the latching handles to keep varmints and rodents and those types of things out of your worm farm. You are going to need another container. This is just one that I've already had in my stash of totes that you could use anything for this second container. And what this is for is to rehydrate the bedding. The bedding for your worms is going to be what is called coconut peat or coconut core. For a bin this size, you're going to need probably a 5-pound brick of this coconut core. This is a 5-pound brick. It's actually 4 1 1/4 pound bricks. So this is 5 pounds. But for this size bin, you're going to want at least 4 to 5 pounds of this coconut peat moss or coconut core. And then you have to rehydrate this with water, and that's why you would need a tub of some sort, a big bowl, something that's substantial to hold this much, because it will like quadruple in size. In fact, this tote I have might not be big enough for this. You're also going to need newspaper shavings. Now, I didn't have very many newspapers. We don't get newspapers much anymore these days because most everything is online. But I did have some of these plain brown paper bags, and so I just used my paper cutter and I shredded these up. If you have a paper shredder, that would be even better and easier, but I just used my paper cutter. For this, you want to use newspaper that's not shiny, because that has like a waxy film or plastic in it. You don't want anything that has plastic, so you want to make sure that your groceries, if you use paper bags, that they're uncoated, just plain paper bags. And you won't need a ton of it, but you will need a few good handfuls of newspaper or paper, shredded paper. And then I don't have the other thing in the house that you're going to need yet, but when I go to put this worm farm together, I'll show it to you. You're going to need about 3 or 4 cups of soil or sand just from your yard, because worms do not have teeth. They have a gizzard like birds, and they need the grit in order to digest their food. So then with this tub, the first thing you need to do is you don't want to put any holes down in the lower part. Some worm people that raise worms have drain holes in the bottom of their tubs, but if you make sure that your worm farms are not getting too wet, you won't need drain holes in the bottom. If you put holes down here, all that's going to do is cause your worms to escape, and you definitely don't want that, especially if your vermiculture farm is in your house. But you do need air holes. So I'm going to take my drill here, and you need a 1/4 inch bit, and I'm going to drill all the way around the top of this tub some air holes for my worms. So there, I have all the holes drilled on all 4 sides, and you want to make sure that you keep it up to the top part of the bin above this little lip that usually are on bins, and that way if your castings get taller, like if you're kind of late in harvesting them, the air holes are still plenty high so that your either your worms don't escape or the castings and bedding and stuff don't come falling out of the holes. And you definitely want to make sure the holes are a 1/4 inch. You're using your 1/4 inch drill bit, because just like everything else, the worms need oxygen to live, and you want to make sure they have plenty of oxygen. Another thing you might want to pick up, it's not absolutely necessary, but something that you might want to pick up if you've never done this before, is a good reference book. This has been pretty helpful. I honestly did learn most of the stuff that was in this book from watching videos, but it is nice to have a hard copy of whatever projects you're working on in case you can't get on the internet. You know, what if your power is out or your internet goes down and you need some answers, or you have a question? It's always good to have manuals or books on the projects that you're working on. I also want to make sure and give credit to the channel that I learned how to do this from. Like I said, I watched several different videos. This is the video that resounded with me and made the most sense to me and looked the easiest, although worm farming, from what I gather, is super simple. But this was worm farming on a budget. You can buy like ready-made like worm composting farms that are on stands that are real fancy. They have different drawers and whatnot. Those are well over $100 just for that, and I wanted to do my worm farm on a budget. So the channel that I watched, that I've actually since subscribed to, is called Homestead and Chill. I will have the link to their vermicomposting video in the description box below, the video I watched that got me inspired to give this a try. And of course you're going to need some worms. This package just came. I was waiting for it. I knew it was supposed to come today, so it just came. I ordered my worms from a worm farm called Uncle Jim's Worm Farm. They're out of Pennsylvania. And I tried to be the most economical I could with my orders, my worm order. I ordered the kit, like the starter kit. This is Uncle Jim's. Let's see, your worms have been shipped in dry peat moss. If the worm seems small and scrawny, this is normal. It's been an average of 4 days since they've had food or water. They'll regain their original size and strength within 2 days. Okay, so I'm going to have to read all of this before I even open my worms up. And the kit came with a Rubbermaid container, which these days is like gold. There's worms in here. These are the worms. I think I can feel them. Oh, there's one crawling. Oh my goodness. It escaped. It escaped its little thing, and I can feel them crawling in there. This is a worm blanket. There's several worms out of their packaging. I've got more burlap too, so I can use that. I think that one's... Nope, he's alive. Get on there, little guy. And then this is the bedding. So, yeah. All right. I'm going to put these guys back in. I'm going to close this back up. Because I don't want them escaping out of here. I don't know what this... Oh, this is worm food, which came with the kit. I will put a link in the description box below for Uncle Jim's worms. And so if you want to do this, you can order your worms. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this all up. I'm going to read all the instructions. I have to get my coconut core soaking, and we'll get on with getting these guys into their home. I've got some compost I've been saving for the last few days so that I can feed them. So yeah, this is exciting. This is exciting. Olivia thinks worms are slimy, but that one that was on my finger, it wasn't slimy. It was cold, but it wasn't slimy. Actually, they just left yesterday. So I think they were taking into consideration that sometimes it takes longer than a day. Yeah, according to the FedEx tracking, they left Pennsylvania yesterday, and I got them today, which is awesome. All right, I'm going to do some little homework here, and then we'll get on with our project. So I just used 3 out of the 4 bricks that was in this package because they sent me some bedding material. I'm not going to need all of it. Olivia brought me down some water. I'm going to pour this on here. I'm probably going to need more water than this, but we will see. So the coconut core is all reconstituted. I'm going to dump that in here. It's a little bit wetter than you want it to be, but I'm going to be adding some dry material to this, so I think that'll even everything out. So then to this, I'm going to add the shredded up paper that I was telling you about. And that will help suck up some of the moisture. I'm not going to use all of it. That'll probably be enough. Then I went out and got some sand from the yard, and it's wet because we had a lot of rain last night. It's got a little bit of pine needles in it, but that's going to be okay. I don't think that'll bother anything. But I think I told you earlier in this video that worms have gizzards like a bird. so they need the grit. Oh my goodness, there's worms all over my bedding here. I don't want to hurt them. You want to hold them, Olivia? No.
It's crawling away. It's crawling away.
Come here, mister. Hold that. Make sure there's no worms on it. Ooh, they're wriggly.
Another one.
These things are called red wrigglers.
I don't like them. Look at that. There's one right there.
There's one on my thumb. They're cute. Look at that little guy. He's so cute. Where's the other one?
Get him.
All right. There. These are little baby worms. Oh, there's one on the box. My goodness. They didn't tell me they escaped from their shipping packaging. Woo! All right, get in there, guy. All right. Okay, so go ahead and open that up and dump that in there. And I'm going to get down and I'm going to mix this all up with my hands. Okay. Is that a little worm? Oh, he's an active little sucker.
They said red wrigglers.
So I'm going to go ahead and get in here and mix this really, really, really well. Now they will break all of this down. They will eat the paper. They will eat the coconut. It's called bedding, but it's actually kind of their food as well. And you want the material to be moist but not soaking wet, like a damp sponge, which is pretty much what this is. I don't think I'm going to need to add any more moisture to this. So now what I'm going to do is would you run up and get the compost bucket? I'm going to dig a little trench or a little pit in here. I'm going to put some of this paper in there because it seems a little wet. You can put paper toweling in there, used paper toweling, as long as you didn't use it to wipe up any chemicals or cleaners or anything. And everything you put in your worm bin, you want to break it down a little bit. That way, they just will eat it faster that way. So this paper toweling will also help kind of sop up any extra. And as you see, I have a banana in here, banana peel I cut up, and I got some lettuce. I'm going to break it up a little bit more. And I'm also going to sprinkle some of the worm food that they sent so that it kind of helps them acclimate to their new home. I got some potato scraps and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's there. And Olivia, can you hand me the worm food they sent? Like a handful. It looks like it might be, I'm not sure what it's made out of. It looks like it might be made out of oatmeal or something. Okay, so now can you hand me the...
It smells kind of good.
All right, I ordered 500 worms came with the kit, and I ordered an extra 250. So I have 750 worms to start with. I'm going to get all the ones that are out of the bag in here first.
He wants them.
This tub that they sent was actually, I guess, what you're supposed to do the worm farm in, but this bin is way too small for what I need. Now, in the instructions it said to add a cup of water to these guys, but since I'm putting them in their bedding right away, I don't think I'm going to need to do that. And plus this bedding is a little bit on the moist side. They really have this thing tied. When you want to work on opening that one? Red wigglers are the best composting worms to use. You don't want to use night crawlers or fishing worms. These are nice, healthy worms. Looks like. You want to make sure they're all out of there.
They're so gross.
Oh yeah, they are moving. They are moving. I'll pull them out of there if there's any in. I'll get them. Let me get you a close-up of these guys. It's kind of dark, but I think you can see them. Here.
No, you can't put it on the floor. I don't want to eat them.
See them moving? Nice, healthy worms. Awesome.
Oliver wants to eat them.
Oliver, you can't eat them. All right, so here it is. All done, all ready to go. I had this other piece of burlap. This is the burlap they sent, and it's just like a worm blanket. And the purpose of the worm blanket is really to just kind of keep the worms from migrating. Sometimes they'll try to escape and migrate up the side of the tub until they get used to their new home. And it's also to help keep the moisture in. I had another little piece of burlap that I put in here, but I don't need it covering the whole thing because I'm just keeping worms on this side of the bin to start with. In a week I will feed over here and they will migrate over here. So this is our setup, and I'm very happy the worms came and they were alive. Uncle Jim's worm farm does have a 48-hour guarantee, so in a couple of days if they've died I can contact them and they will send me more. But they looked very healthy, very active, so, and I followed the directions on that video. I kind of combined the directions from what Uncle Jim sent and what the video said. Their instructions were very, very similar, just a few little differences. So friends, that is how I put my vermiculture set up together, my worm farm. Hope you found this video informative. And if you have any kind of garden, if you're going to do container gardens, whatever you're going to do, and if you have room, I would highly recommend that you start your own vermiculture or worm farm. I can't tell you right now how easy it's going to be moving forward, but I do know that setting it up was very easy and not very expensive. Thanks you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment in the comment section below, and I will have the link to the original video that I watched and a link to Uncle Jim's worm farm in the description box below so that you can take advantage of those resources if you decide to do this for yourself. Thanks so much for watching, friends, and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.